As an F1 fan here and having covered it for so many years for Fox Sports, can I just say what a start to the new season it has been. Lando Norris winning the first race in Australia before teammate Oscar Piastri's win in China saw McLaren win the first two races of the season. And then, of course, the big news ahead of the first race in Japan. The big news ahead of the third race in Japan, is that Red Bull have dropped their newest driver, Liam Lawson, after just two races and replaced him with Japanese star Yuki Tsunoda, the very man who was recently overlooked for that very seat.
Yeah, on the subject of Formula One, and given that it is my first episode with you guys as a co-host, I figured why one Chandok when you can have two guys. So I have got Karun along, and it's a good time to chat about F1 on a well-timed break. Hi, Karun.
Wow, what a thrill this is. Two Chandhoks for the price of one. Actually, I don't know what your price is, so I won't go there. You might be paying double. Karen, I just got to ask, we've been talking about Formula One. We're not easing into this season, are we? Two races in, so much has happened already. Chief amongst them, Liam Lawson's demotion, Yuki Tsunoda going up. What do you make about that whole decision? Because it was only a few months ago that Tsunoda was overlooked for that seat. Now Lawson's been moved down and Yuki's suddenly the man to take over.
Yeah, to be honest, the whole thing is just messy. I'm a bit disappointed with the way it's been handled in some ways, but also in the way it's turned out for Liam, because I really thought over the winter that he was the right choice for the team over Yuki, if I'm honest. I think last year they were kind of equal, but in the end, I thought he was an equal for Yuki, having only done 11 races and Yuki having done 4 years. So his trajectory was clearly on the up. I think what's clear is that the way that these rookies and these young drivers are being prepared to move into the top Red Bull seat, whether it's, you rewind a bit, Albon, Gasly, Daniel Kvyat before that, and Liam, it's clearly not enough in the same way that, for example, Mercedes have prepared Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli's done 10,000 kilometers of testing. They've taken, an older car all around the world to multiple circuits for him to get experience and get confidence. Liam's just been dropped into it with a day and a half of testing with the new car, a little bit of testing with the old car. I think he only got a day at Jerez.
No.
So, I think if I was Red Bull, Yuki's gonna have a chance, and who knows how he'll go. It's a fascinating sort of subplot to the Japanese GP to see how both Yuki and Liam go, to be honest. But I think big picture, Red Bull need to think about how they're preparing these young drivers.
I think that's something I want to talk to you about, right? You've sampled being a part of that Red Bull Junior program. Your first test was alongside DC in a Red Bull car. Two parts. One, where do they go from here with that Red Bull program? You've got an Isaac Hadjar in there, but obviously the shuffling. And two, how much pressure is there when you're part of a program like that?
There's pressure in every program. I think the difference with the Red Bull program is they're not opposed to chopping and changing middle of the season, whereas others tend to wait till the end of the year. But honestly, F1's not a finishing school. F1's not a place where you have to arrive as the finished product. You're there to be one of the 20 best drivers in the world. You're not there to listen and learn. You get a little bit of a grace period where you're allowed to be maybe 3-4 tenths off your teammate for a few races, but that's it. You can't be half a second off in F1. It just doesn't work. You've got to be 2-3 tenths. So the pressure is on all of them. The pressure to perform is on all of them. I think the only difference is Red Bull are a bit more brutal mid-season, but ultimately, they're investing a lot of money and they expect results. But I think what they have to be fair to these guys about is preparing them in the right way. Because what is clear is that the main Red Bull team, the car is tricky to drive. Multiple drivers, as I said, have come through it, and they've gone on to do good things. Albon's doing an amazing job at Williams.
Yeah.
Gasly's doing a great job at Alpine. Even Perez was doing a great job at Force India before. And who knows how Liam will do now in the Racing Bulls. So I think there's a big picture, two things to consider. One is, do they have to make the car easier to drive? But that's a tougher one to answer, because if you make a car easier to drive, typically you also make it slower, and you don't want to make Max Verstappen slower. He's your number one top dog.
Yeah.
So it's actually a very tough position they've got themselves into.
Yeah, it's interesting that Mario Andretti talked about how Lawson's chopping now has sort of put Sergio Perez in good light for Cadillac, and we'll go into all of that when 2026 rolls around. But on the positive side of things, someone that's come in straight up with pace, Oscar Piastri, how impressive has he been to you, to everyone in the paddock? Because it just seems like he's got the mental chops to cut it at the highest level.
I think, but if you think of the example I was just saying, rookies can't mess around. They don't have time to dial themselves in. Oscar's an example of that.
Yeah.
He's been like Leclerc, like Max, like Lewis before. He's arrived second race in Saudi Arabia. He was an equal for Lando and out-qualified him. He was there in his rookie season for pace. Needed to gain experience in the races, was struggling with tire wear, corrected a lot of that last season, and he's taken another step up. In China, he was absolutely dominant. And actually, frankly, if you look at the whole season so far, he's had one bad corner when the rain came down in Melbourne. Otherwise, he looked quicker than Lando in the race. He was catching Lando, he's putting pressure on Lando. So really, he got unlucky being on the wrong tires when the rain came down. And he's been outstanding this year. And I'm excited to see. Lando is a super fast driver, no doubt about it. He's exceptionally fast. But we saw in China, he made mistakes in both the qualifying sessions, made a mistake on the opening lap of the sprint. So as the season unfolds, he'll have to stop making those mistakes, because in terms of speed, they're there, but the consistency from both sides. Oscar had some bad weekends last year as well, where he was 4-5 tenths away from Lando. So they both got to find that consistency.
Just tell us a bit about Papaya Rules, actually, Karun, because if it does pan out this season.
It's an idiotic name. That's what it is.
Okay, yeah. Well, aside from that, if the season does pan out that it is which McLaren driver will win the championship, at what point do they decide to enforce team orders?
I think as long as they're both mathematically in it, and especially if they're both fighting quite close on points, they can't have team orders.
No.
They've got to have sensible team orders, like don't take each other out and things like that. But for example, we saw with the strategy in a race like Melbourne, when the weather was changing and stuff like that, only one driver could have the right strategy, and they have to give it to the lead car. And Oscar lost out on that occasion with track position. So that's where it starts to get a bit tricky, right? Is who do you have to then, if they're running 1-2, they're running close together strategically, you have to give the lead car the right call. I think that's a fair way to do it. But so McLaren, honestly, if it comes to it, that's a good problem to have. if you have to think about team orders, then you're doing okay. So I think that's a headache everyone would like.
And we saw that with Ferrari as well, didn't we? Yeah, and I think that the one talking point coming into the season, of course, around the world was Lewis. Just tell us a little bit about the hype, the buzz. 2 races in to get a win. Yes, a sprint win, albeit, but just how big was that moment, not just for Ferrari fans, but for the sport itself, to see Lewis back in red, doing what he does best?
It was amazing. He looks energized. He looks motivated. But that weekend in China, the crowd were going nuts. He's clearly the biggest star we have on the planet, and the fan club was out of force. And the sprint, we got an insight into the Lewis of old. He delivered those laps, delivered the qualifying lap. It was amazing. But then it went away on Sunday, and it just shows actually how competitive F1 is. All that happened on Sunday is the track got hotter. It got a bit more rubber down Saturday evening for qualifying as well. Yeah. Just change of the track conditions, change of the wind a little bit, change of the temperature, and suddenly the Ferrari is now 4 tenths away from the pace. Yeah. And it's just F1 is at a knife edge at the moment. All of a sudden, Max is a contender for pole where he didn't look anywhere in the sprint. He just fell way behind Lewis in the sprint. So, I think it's we're in a really healthy position at the moment where we arrive every weekend thinking McLaren are the favorites, but with a bit of a tailwind, other people can get in the fight.
I guess, Karun, before I let you go, I know we're on a a little bit of a breather and a family holiday. So I know the kids are waiting as well.
It's fine. This podcast is helping me stop him smashing me in pickleballs. Need a bit of respite.
Have to also ask you about your book. He's just written a kid's book on Formula One and motorsport. So maybe tell everyone around the world a little bit about that, because it's a pretty unique twist on motorsport and something that's not quite accessible normally.
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone wants to read my life story, and I don't really feel like writing about it. But I thought, there's a lot of people around the world who the kids are now into F1. There's such a wave of interest in the sport and kids coming into it. But actually, there isn't a book out there to teach the kids a bit more about how racetracks are made, how are cars made, what happens in a race team. Also telling them a little bit of what jobs they could get if they want to work in F1. It's not just being a driver. And, I went on tour to schools and, talking to school kids from the age of 7 to 13, which is sort of age group for the book. And you start to tell them, you can be a chef in a Formula One team. You can be a psychologist. You can, obviously they think of mechanics in a pit stop and they think of maybe engineers. But they don't think of all of these other things, accountants, finance, marketing, there's so many different things. And, I wanted to put something out there to inspire kids to learn a bit more about the sport, get excited about maybe working in the sport one day. Wanted to make the book affordable, so it's a black and white paperback. Want to make it affordable.
Nice.
There's lots of other books out there which are picture books and glossy things, but they don't actually teach the kids anything. And so I think also for me, we have a rich history of the sport. And now when I travel around, for a lot of kids, F1 started with Netflix. F1 started with Lando Norris. They have no idea who Michael Schumacher is.
That's
And
insane.
so I think it's really important to explain to people who Jim Clark was and Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. These are none of these names are even on their radar anymore. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun promoting it out and about, and it's been fun seeing it on the shelves as well. It's even in Melbourne, I was leaving Melbourne after the Grand Prix, after the first race, and it was on the shelves at the airport. So
Wow.
that was pretty exciting. So yeah, no, it's been a fun project.
Yeah, Karun, thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to let you head off back to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And
See you later.
Thank you so much, Karun.
Well, there we go. We got ourselves an F1 roundup, guys. I think that's a lot more than we maybe bargained for as well. But yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, I think the hype around McLaren and how quick they are versus the results that haven't quite gone their way. It's kind of brought Max back into the fight. It's brought Ferrari into the fight as well. And I think, like he said, F1 in 2025 seems to be on this incredible knife's edge, which is why there's more and more viewers tuning in as well. And it just makes the season even better.